Okay, good morning. My name's Caroline Hunt, and I am the Managing Director of Emerald Starfish. We're a company that helps organisations with their recruitment. So today's SME Recruitment Forum is about the best interview questions to ask. So this follows on from last week's, where we looked at competency-based interviews, but this one is kind of perhaps a bit broader in terms of kind of all the different types of questions. So what I've done is I've split this into two parts. So first of all, what do you really want to find out about the candidate, and what are the best questions to be asking to find out if they can do this job? And then the second part is a question and answer session, which I won't record. Okay. So what do you want to know? I think when you're interviewing, it's really important to get as much information as you possibly can about the person you've got in front of you to make the best decision that you possibly can. So whether that's using psychometric tests, seeing them twice, tests around the job. So for example, Chloe, if you're doing a marketing role, you might want them to do a presentation and give them really specific tasks around some of the roles that you want them to do. So the sorts of things that we want to know about is, what do they know about the job that they've applied for? So this is really important at the moment. I was booking some candidates in yesterday, and over half of them stopped me and said, can you just remind me of what the role is that I've applied for? And it's not unusual. It's really easy to apply for jobs on any of the job boards. Candidates are just clicking, but actually what you want is you want somebody who understands what your role is and has done some level of research. If they've researched the role, it shows that they've spent some time investing in your organisation. It means they're more likely to stay in the recruitment process. They're more likely to accept a role if it's offered. And it even relates into better retention in the role. If they're bought in at this stage, they've done the research, they're more likely to stay in the role if you offer it to them. So double clicked on that. So the second thing that I think is really important is, what skills and experience do they have which will transfer to your workplace? So what have they already learnt in their current roles that are really relevant to you? And then the final part, which is becoming more and more important, but is especially important within the SME market, is how do their values match yours? So just going back in terms of kind of the first areas to ask about, let me just, the three areas. So first of all, I would always ask about job history. I think this is a really great question to start with, because what it does is it allows people to talk about themselves, and they are an expert in themselves. So it's a really good way of relaxing into the interview and getting them a little bit more comfortable. So what I would be looking for is look for any gaps on the CV to explore those. In 25 years, most gaps are completely explainable, but obviously look out for patterns and trends. So things like, not getting on with a manager, so therefore left the job. I would be really concerned by that. Reasons for leaving roles, what was the reason for the next career step, to see that they're being honest really as much as anything. And look for how roles have progressed, what sort of things are they looking for. I also do things like look at how long they're within a job. So if somebody job hops every 18 months, you can predict that they are most likely to leave your role after 18 months. That might be fine, but you should be aware of that. And I perhaps ask questions around that as well, so how long do you see yourself being in this role? What do you need to get from this role to be successful? What would you need to have the development that you're looking for within your position? So the other thing to have a think about is, if they're doing a slightly different job, what are the most important parts of the role that they are doing, and how does that relate to the role that you're interviewing them for? So questions around, so tell me what you do on a daily basis, are really good questions, because what's written on a CV is very different. You're really wanting to understand what they do. And also, kind of, have they got what you need for the job? If they haven't got what you want, is it trainable? So have a think about that. The other thing that I think is really important is not to sweat the small stuff. Don't go back too far. So I would never go back beyond 10 years. And actually, when I say that to a candidate, talk me through your job history, just the last, however long is relevant for the candidate, the last 5 years, the last 10 years. If they decide to take me right back to the start, I would really question that. Sometimes it's relevant. Sometimes you're wanting to see how the whole career has developed, but really appreciate that things that have happened in the last, really since COVID, are all that's relevant, because the way of working has changed, the world has moved on, and therefore to look at stuff that is really old isn't really that relevant for you. So the next area that I would always have are competency-based questions. So these are different from scenario questions. So the idea is that past performance is the best predictor of future behaviours. How somebody has reacted in one situation, if faced with a similar situation, is most likely how they will react again. So what we do is we break every job down into competencies or skills. So for example, for a marketing manager, you might want to look at things like attention to detail. You might want to look at drive for results. You might want to look at presentation skills, planning and organisation, team working, project management, all of these things. Don't choose too many. Think about what's most important within your role, and then have a question that reflects this. So for example, for project management, give me an example of a project that you've been involved with, talk me through it, and what was the final outcome. So it's really about, if that's what your role involves and they've done it previously, how successful were they, and how well did are they able to demonstrate those skills? So what we do is, and again, particularly you, Chloe, I'll send you this through, but we have positive indicators for every role. So somebody that's a good project manager, there's a communication thing that they need to be able to do. They need to have a really clear plan around that. So you want to see that they demonstrate these things in the answers, so that you can judge one candidate against another in an objective rather than a subjective way. Within smaller companies, within the SME environment, questions that are always really worthwhile asking are questions around adaptability and flexibility. Tell me about a time when something changed and you had to manage that change, or when something didn't quite go to plan, or your job role changed. How did you feel about it? Because it's a fast-paced environment, if things are changing on a regular basis and the candidate says, actually, I don't like change, or I've never had that change, if they don't like change, then they're not going to enjoy it if it comes along in the current job. And if they've never had change, there is a risk there, because you don't know how they will manage that change. But ask for really specific examples from the workplace. Don't go back too far, certainly not really pre-COVID, and be really clear and probe lots to find out that they're giving you as full an answer as they possibly can. Another good question at the end of that is to ask them, what did they learn, and how have they managed to apply that learning moving forward? Because it's fine to make mistakes, but once you've made a mistake, what did you learn from it? How did you move it on? If you've done a great piece of work, what could you have done differently the next time? And then the final area, which I think is really important within the SME market, is to ask around questions around values. So these are so important in a small business, and whether you've got specific values that as an organisation you are living and breathing, or whether you have personal values, it's really important to check that the candidate in front of you's values match. The skill piece is less than 50% of a candidate's profile in an SME. They really need to be able to reflect your values. And the sort of questions that you can ask around this are, what gets them up in the morning? What is it that makes them get up and go out to work? What are the most important things for them in their next boss and their next manager? How do they want to be managed, and what's important in terms of that? what values do they live their life by? I quite like questions around energizing as well. So what sort of things really energize you in the workplace? You know, what sort of things make you feel valued and wanted and important, and what tasks de-energize you? Again, you can match up whether they're a fit for what you're asking them to do, or actually whether they'll get bored very quickly, and think about how their answers fit with your company values if you've got them, or your personal values. It's really this kind of square peg in a round hole. So those are the three areas that I would particularly look at. I'd go through the job history and make sure that you're clear with that, and look at their transferable skills around that. I would ask some specific competency-based questions that really cover off the skills that you are looking for, to show that they've demonstrated those, and have a scoring system that you can assign, so that you can judge one candidate against another one in an objective way. And then I would question their values to make sure that they fit within yours, the teams, and the organization as well. So that's the whole thing, really. If you want to know more about interviewing, or have some more information from myself, please feel free to book in on a strategy session. The ones that I'm running at the moment, they last for an hour. They're just with you and me, and we look at job adverts and how to use job boards. Oh, this is the wrong one. But they would look at competency-based interviews. They would look at the values questions and the things we've covered off today, and also the information that a candidate needs to know from you to be able to make their decision, which is what we'll be covering off in next week's session. If you want to look at the employer branding one, that's absolutely fine. Log in, book yourself a session, and just let me know that in the information that you have to give me. You can do that online at emeraldstarfish.com. My diary is there on the front page. You can access it and book straight in. Thanks very much for your time. My name's Caroline Hunt of Emerald Starfish.